for yourself. So, you know, what makes me think about it also is not just children, but the young people that are cutting themselves.
Yeah.
You know, especially a few years ago, you know, they were really big into cutting themselves. And I've seen a lot of, like, as I've gotten older, I've seen a lot of people that are now adults that have those scars, those prior scars from where they cut themselves, you know, just in, you know, your regular public workplace, different places that you see. And it always, when I see painful looking things, I internalize it. Like, I'm compassionate about it. And I've just, you know, you can't ask them, you know, well, you know, what happened? Are you okay now? Because the cut might be just on the inside. Like, they might not be cutting on the outside anymore, but the cut might still be on the inside. So I got that from my mom, to be naturally compassionate and try to maybe help somebody if I can. But I've also learned to keep my boundary. Because they might not be ready for healing. I might not be able to help them either. But like Becky said, they could get therapy. But let me ask you, like, on a scale of 1 to 5, like in our own personal life, what is your pain ratio? Like, how much pain do you allow dealing with situations or people now compared to when you were, like, you know, 10, 15 years ago?
Well, for me personally, perspective of age has changed a lot. It's allowed me to have a different pain level.
Right.
So something that I might have thought years ago was so painful, and it might have been painful. You know, I look back and I think that it, you know, as you get older, you have a perspective that says, you know, this too will pass, because you know it will pass. Some other things are more permanent, but you have a different perspective as to what you can do about that pain. Of course, when you're a child, you feel like you can't do anything, and I remember that too. But how vulnerable you are. But then as an adult, I think it's important to still be, you can be vulnerable, meaning you can be real, you can be authentic, and you can be yourself, and you might get some pain back, but it's okay because you are yourself, and you know, talk about boundaries, you know that you're important enough to be able to take, be able to have a perspective when someone may do something that you feel a little pain about. You can feel differently about it. You can still be in a healthy place without just taking it in and letting it hurt you permanently.
Right. And I agree with you as far as when you're younger. When I was younger, I didn't even realize it was pain. You know, it was just, you know, I took it on and I just kept it moving. And I think where for me, it hit me was once I got older, is where it all started coming out in anger and frustration. And even as a kid, you know, I may have been kind of mean or angry, and I don't think people really understood why. I don't even know if I understood why. I don't know if I picked up traits, you know, from you know, your upbringing or what it was that latched on to me, but I was very a matter-of-factly and, you know, get out of here, you know, you go ahead on, you know. But the crazy thing was that I took more in my relationships, my personal relationships, than I would in just like friendships and, you know, just people that weren't close to me. People that weren't close to me had a boundary. Because I'm not gonna tolerate it. You know, you can go ahead on. And I was a fighter. And I don't mean just, you know, duking it out. I mean, like, I might be scared, but you're not gonna know that I'm scared. Because you know,
that probably served you well, though.
It did.
You know, I'm thinking while you're talking, I didn't have boundaries like that. I wasn't tough, and you know, I don't know where that came from either. I guess I don't know about. I didn't stand up for myself much. I kind of internalized a lot more than anything. So I'm listening to that, and I'm like, I wish I would have had some of that. You know, to defend myself.
Yeah. And I did, but I didn't have it in my personal relationships until it peaked. And then once it got to the point where, you know, all of a sudden, boom, and I would explode. And now it's like, you know, I'm ready. You know, I'm ready. And so for me now, where I am at this point in my life, I don't tolerate it, and I don't care who you are.
I'm the kind of person that I was really good for just abandoning folk. Like I would abandon
you
people.
You would leave the situation.
Yeah, I would leave.
You know, let me tell you, I'm trying to think. I was watching something and they were talking about that and how she would always leave a situation.
Yeah, I would just, you know, because the pain was too great. I didn't necessarily like, you know, hate you or anything like that, but I just was saying, you know, hey, I'm going this way. You go wherever you want to go, but I don't want any more of that. So, you know, you go on. I'm not going to like hate you, but you're not going to keep doing that to me. So I don't want to have anything to do with you. So I was really good with just like, you know, do this.
I think that's okay too.
Yeah.
But see, you know what? The difference is that I went through abandonment, so I guess my issue was I didn't want to abandon people.
Right.
You know, because I had been abandoned.
Yes.
You know, so, you know, and sometimes we as women have a tendency to stay in things too long. Yeah. Yeah. You know, we stay somewhere too long. It's over. Yeah. Walk away. It's done. Yeah. You know?
And since like that's perfectly like what you were saying, by me abandoning people, and I was thinking it was okay because I'm thinking,
you told them holler back. I'm out.
Yeah, I feel like, hey, at least I'm not hurting you back. I'm not doing anything negative to you, so I'm good. I'm righteous. You know, I'm righteous because I'm not the one doing nothing to nobody. You know, but that was wrong because then how many relationships do you build? Right. I mean, you know, you got your high school relationships. Right. You got some friendships because, you know, high school you're doing different activities and all this stuff. As you're an adult and you keep abandoning folks, you know, your relationships get cut back because I don't think anybody should stand for a whole lot of drama unless that's they can handle that. But at the same time, you have to, if you're going to have friends, you're going to have to be flexible to some degree. Right. I think if they respect you as a friend or learn to respect you, they're not going to come at you a certain way. But I think, you know, so I wasn't correct. I wasn't completely correct in just abandoning people and just saying, bye, see you later next time, you know, whatever.
Well, what I've had to learn to do too is I've had to step back and I've had to see what my responsibility was in the situations that I've been in. Yes. Because the only way for me to be able to learn how to move going forward, because you want better relationships. Yes. You know, you want to be in a great marriage. You want to be in, you know, your children have great relationships with your children. Yeah. You know, you want to have great relationships with your friends. And listen, everything has turbulence. Yeah. That's not, I mean, this is just the world we live in, but I'm just saying, you know, where it's okay, you know, but I had to step back and say, what part did I play in this to get this to this point? Yeah. You know, and that's when I started discovering what I was carrying on my back. Okay. And being tough, it sounds good, but it is terrible because you carry the load, and I'm walking around here. You know how they have those big old, you know, in those countries, and they have them big things on their bicycles, and they have all that stuff packed up, and they just riding around, and I'm riding around with all this baggage. I got my kids, you know, hooked to it. They both on both sides, hanging on. You know, I got all my pain and all my suffering, and I got their pain and suffering that, you know, that I have to take responsibility for because I was their guide. Okay. You know what I mean? Like I'm their leader. Yeah. And what did I bring into their experience that affected them? Yeah. Now we got the cycle.
That was for me the biggest thing with thinking about like divorce. I mean, I you know, not so much ego's sake talking about I don't want to be a statistic, But at the same time, I'm like, okay, I had not planned for my child to be a statistic, even though he's not that you can have a good statistic, but you know, he still has his dad in his life, you know, very heavily. He has me, and now he has a new co-parent, you know, step-parent. But my whole concern was, how is he handling, how is he going to digest all of this? But I knew for me personally, I said, well, if I don't be true to myself, am I really doing him a good service, you know? So I know that's all, you know, personal, and it depends on how you look and see things and the situation you're in. But for me, I wondered about how his pain would be.
Yeah.
And even though I'm sure his dad was a protector as well, I felt like I was the protector. You know, I was the one that talked about spiritual things.
Yeah, because you know what it was all about. I got this.
No, yeah, you know. So I felt like, you know, so what's gonna happen? You know. So anyway, it's a tough road. You know, pain is a tough road because it ripples. It ripples, but I tried to always keep an open dialogue and an open conversation as much as was possible, you know, like with my son. And I've learned to have better dialogues with other people because I never was a big talker. You know, I would be like, you know, I can hang out with you. You know, I like you. We can have fun. But I didn't necessarily talk about it because I think I just didn't know what to say or how to open that up without opening myself up. So I was trying to shield myself, you know. But what about you, Becky?
Well, honestly, as I listen to this, I'm like, man, I still have a lot to learn because there's so much that you can unpack from your life. As we're talking about this now, I'm thinking about, wow, when I got divorced, how did that go down for me? Even though my husband and I said, look, you know, this is ending, but we can decide between the two of us how we're going to do this. You could do it with a lot of anger and a lot of fireworks, and even though you might be feeling that at some level, or, you know, really feeling that, the way, you know, we had 2 children, and the way that we conducted ourselves through a really terrible time could help in some way to get through that time without causing even more damage than need be.
Exactly.
You know, and that's one thing out of all the pain. That's one thing I think that we did all right. We did all right, and you know, it wasn't fun for anybody, and who knows how my children still really hurt from that. They'll always hurt from not having 2 people that they love dearly be together. You know, it must have been shattering. But that being said, we tried to go forward in the best way that we could.
Yeah. Well, taking on another turn of things, how do you guys feel about physical pain? Like, whatever type of physical pain you've experienced in your life, how were you able to handle it? You know, like, what did you reach for? Like, did you call somebody and say, and complain about your pain, I'm hurting, I'm in pain, or did you call the doctor? Did you go hit the gym and just like knock it out? Or, you know, was it something like pills or sex or books or alcohol? I mean, how have you guys managed pain?
Coping. Yeah, well, I can tell you that it's not calling somebody to complain because nobody wants to hear it. Yeah. They don't care about what you got going on, you know, with your body. You know, I can say that for me, when you take it all in and you don't really deal with it, you find another coping mechanism.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes, and I think when it's stemming from you not having enough attention when you were younger or not being validated, that's why, you know, it's important for parents to make sure that they tell their children who they are.
Yes,
ooh,
so
that's good.
Because when they don't, that child is going to have to grow up and try to figure it out.
Right.
And, you know, the hurt and the pain that you have, it can send you to drinking, and you know, I can't say that I haven't been a product of that. You know, whether it's in, you know, in my family, in times where, you know, you catch yourself because, you know, you can see the pattern. And I was always one to start paying attention to the pattern, and I felt like, I got to the point where I felt like I was the sacrifice to break the ties, to break the generational curses, so to speak, for my legacy.
Yes.
And I'm the sacrifice. So I'm the one that's going to make the decision to end certain things so that we can start this with a new cycle, and we can be on a more positive note.
Wow, that takes a lot of courage.
Yeah,
wow.
and so in the coping mechanisms, you know, you find yourself smoking cigarettes. You find yourself, you know, some people drugs, you know, other people. But in my life, you know, I've dibbled and dabbled in, you know, different things that I thought would help me out, and all it did was make it worse.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think I struggle with, you know, trying to handle pain. Sometimes what happens is then you give more love.
Then you need
you give more love because you're trying to compensate, and you're thinking, well, if I just show that person even more love, they're going to get it. You know, they're really going to get what I'm trying to say. They're going to feel it. They're going to take it in and, you know, digest it. They're going to, like, you know, be able to be stronger. They're going to feel like they can trust.
Right.
But that's just not the case. Like, you know, I'm putting my idea of what's going to help somebody else on them. And sometimes giving more love. Now, you can give love, and love is always great, but you have to know what measure of love to give, and if it's helpful or harmful, because you just may not be being truthful and not truthful with yourself. So, you know, I used to have a way of trying to do that, just doing more, showing more love, you know, giving more, doing this and doing that, because that's what I saw my parents do. You know, my dad always was a giver. He was constantly helping people, and after he died, people would say, yeah, you know, Mr. Curtis, he used to come do so-and-so, he would help, he'd do this and that. And so that was his way, because he grew up with a lot of pain. You know, he grew up the pain of being a black African-American male in the South. But one thing I can say is my dad never took the pain and talked about it in a negative way. He just worked really hard and tried to make himself better and his family better. He never talked about being a black man. I never remember my dad talking, unless he was like kind of saying something that happened. But he never talked about, you know, oh man, I'm a black man, and you know, this was all my issues. And he didn't. He was out there working, and before I was born in Michigan, it was so cold. He would be working in weather that he literally had icicles on his beard.
Wow.
And they had to burn tires on the ground just to dig footing. So he put himself into work, and he raised his family with his wife. So that's where I think he put some, and on the golf course. On the golf course, he put a lot of pain and burned up the golf course, but it made him have a lot of business relationships. So he did it in a positive way. Right. His father died because they weren't letting black people come to the hospital. Right. And he was not able to get he accidentally hit his foot with the axe, and he could not get treatment from the hospital, so he died. My dad never talked about, oh, I'm so angry because these people didn't let my dad go to the hospital. He just did things, I think, to take care of his family, because of the love he felt maybe from his father of taking care of them when he was still alive. Right. And just working hard to make a better life, and having that hope that, you know, maybe the world's going to get better, maybe things are going to change. And I think that's why I personally would always try to look at everything in such a positive way, like, oh, it's going to get better, they're going to change, this and that and the other, until I would be like, bye, Charlene. I'm abandoning you. I'm abandoning you. I'm out. So, yeah.
What about you, Becky?
Yeah.
Well, I am you know, there's so many levels that we can talk about here.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about I remember one of the most painful times in my life was when I was young. I was just out of college, and I had dated somebody in college for like about 4 years, and I was so in love, and yet here I was graduating from college, and my career was going to take me away from where I was living in Minneapolis, and I was going to Chicago. And, you know, growing up, taking a career, doing things. And long story short, my boyfriend and I ended up breaking up. And my pain with that breakup was so intense that I needed counseling. I'll say it. I needed counseling, but I didn't get it.
Yeah.
But I needed it. And I mean, the grief that I had, I guess it was maybe so strong because we kind of grew up together in that period of time where you're learning new things, you're discovering things, and you're doing it together, and you're great friends and things like that. But then life was different. I had to move, and he had to move in a different direction in the country. And what I'm saying is that I learned from that I actually loved him more than I loved myself.
Wow.
And I did, and I let myself sink so low, thinking I had nothing without him. I really felt like, who am I? Who am I without him? And now I know how, you know, that wasn't true, but I totally had to build myself back up again and learn about myself, which was good. I had to learn who I was without him, what I had to offer as me as an individual. But I'll never forget, it was so painful when it first happened that I said, I'll never ever want to feel like this again. And I'll do whatever I can to learn about this and to have, to be prepared, to know that I am more than I was with him. I am no more as a person, just as you said in the beginning, I'm going to have to be with myself the rest of my life. I've got to be my own best friend. And that was key for me. That was key in just living life as the years go by.
What about physical pain? Have y'all had the physical pain as well?
Yeah.
The physical pain for me was never as tough as the emotional and mental pain. That, you know, physical pain for me was just, you know, you could always find a solution. You know, whether it was some ibuprofen or, you know what I mean, like, you know, surgery or whatever it was that you had to do. But the emotional and the mental that you walk around with,
that's
and in, you know, in the Black community, you know, therapy is, you know, that's, don't talk about therapy. You know, I'm not doing no therapy. You know, nobody. I'm not talking to strangers, and I'm not, you know, so it's kind of almost taboo to, you know, but yet and still, you know, we're hurt people, and we hurt other people, and then so we're just a bunch of hurt people walking around, you know, and, you know, you can't, you know, prosper and be abundant, and I'm not talking about money-wise. Anybody can get to the dollar. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about, like, in your personal life of having, you know, the wealth of, you know, you happy, and you love who you are. You're happy with who you are. There's joy, and because I've met people who are struggling financially and have the greatest personalities. You know, and so they don't carry around all that. They just don't care. And I think even sometimes we get focused on the material side of it all, and that brings us a lot of mental stress and anguish. And I'm gonna mention something else to you too that that I had done a little bit of research on and discovered that because when we get stressed and when we become upset, it cuts off our ability for our body to heal itself.
Yes, that's good.
And
that's
a lot
good.
of people don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
That the reason why when you're angry or you're frustrated or you are literally shutting down your body's ability to be able to heal itself. So, you know, that's why it brings on illnesses and things like that. It's about the eating, but you know, there's you've got to try to find some balance in your life,
right,
and what you consider balance.
Well, you know, thinking about like the physical pain as well, like not long ago, I found myself not being able to walk. Like literally not being able to walk because of all the driving I'm doing, because of not exercising. And I was pushing myself like so far. And I found myself, well, I had worked several weeks, and I found myself driving to one of the stores one day, and I physically found out when I got out of the car, I could not walk. Wow. I literally could not walk.
Yeah.
From a person who's super active, I was in shock. I was like, what does this mean? You know, how am I going to process the fact that I cannot walk? Like, what am I going to do? How am I going to work? You know, do I have disability? You know, all these things that you just don't think about if you're active. So, you know, I went to the chiropractic and I'm better now, so I'm walking again and I'm exercising. Mm-hmm. But I found out that the pain of the physical pain goes straight also to your head, because then you're trying to figure out, well, what do you do now when you cannot be physical like you were before? If you can't go back to walking, well, how I processed that when I went to the chiropractic and they worked on me for 2 hours and I was walking again, and the next day, you know, I was supposed to be resting, but the way I processed things, I was saying, I'm not going to not walk.
So you abandoned.
I abandoned it.
Rest. I'm abandoning rest, and I'm gonna go walking.
I'm walking, and so I did. I worked and cleaned up around the house. I was dragging myself. And cleaning, because I was determined I was not gonna not walk. Yeah. And I said, I'm going to walk because I have to. I have too many things I need to do. Mm-hmm. So, you know, like you were talking about, you know, mind over matter. And not that everybody maybe can jump that quick back into being physical, but like you said, if you have other emotional things going on that you're not dealing with and you don't release that, you'll stay locked up. So
it shuts your body down. And see, your mind is going.
Yeah.
It feels endless. I could go. I could keep going, but the problem is that it has to tell your legs,
you gotta go.
You gotta start moving.
So I kind of pushed my way through it and got back, but then I knew, okay, now I have to exercise. It's not an option. It's things I need to be doing, and I can't just, I'm going to work today. I'm going to work, you know, because I'm trying to get somewhere, you know. But you have to take care of your whole self, you know. But you know, we have friends. I have friends that have, you know, physical illnesses that prevent them from doing a lot of things. So, you know, trying to handle that mentally, and what can I do in the situation I'm in? Mm-hmm. What are the possibilities in this situation? If I'm in a wheelchair, or if I have to go take what's the treatment when you have to go for the liver and everything like that, the kidneys, the dialysis.
Girl,
what if I have to go to the dialysis? You know, so thinking about people like that deal with not just the physical pain, but they're dealing with the mental pain of limitation.
Yeah.
I saw a young lady, I was at the noodle company, this restaurant.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And this young lady, she was sitting at a little table, she had her computer up. She did not have regular arms and legs. She had very, very short limbs. Mm-hmm. Very short, like literally somebody would have to pick her up and move her. Right. And her caretaker, I saw was at another table waiting for her. And I said, my God. I said, look at her. That is awesome. She's out here with whatever she has dealt with, whether it be pain or whether it be mental pain or how I feel about myself or do I have friends or, you know, what am I doing? She was working on her business because I kind of was being nosy because I wanted to see what she was doing. Yeah. And I looked and she was working on her website.
Wow.
And I said, now, so what excuse do we have? You know, when you have ability to do something, you know, what excuse do you really have except your mental barrier? You don't have to have $5,000. Some of these people that do a lot of the websites and a lot of your phone businesses, they said all you need is a cell phone.
Yep.
So whether it's a business or just a hobby, you know, what is it that's going to limit you? You know, how are you going to allow pain to limit your life? Because, you know, we were only given one life that I know about.
The battle of the mind.
Yeah.
You know, it's definitely a battle going on a lot of times.
Yeah.
So to me, what to do? We all have pain in our lives, all our lives. But what are we going to do so it doesn't affect us where we stop or that we make ourselves sick with the mind-body connection thing? How do we work through it, right? I have to feel like with your example, there's so many people that deal with things that like disabilities that to me are almost unfathomable, and I can't help but feel like, what would I be like? What would I do if I had to deal with that? So that's just one thing, but even in life, I have always chosen to take a path where I'm going to be on the positive side. And I do that because that is my nature, but I do that because I honestly believe that it helps you with your perspective to know that there will be a tomorrow where I'm going to do better, or there's always someone who is doing worse than I am, and there's someone who's doing better than I am.
Right.
I mean, I choose to, most of all, try and remember to be grateful.
Yes.
To be grateful for the smallest thing, for the largest thing. To be grateful, and my pain quickly goes into a different perspective when I'm grateful. I don't think about it. I don't think about where I might be hurting, or I realize that it's not really that important.
And that's and by you saying that, where it's not important, a lot of times our minds will make us think that a situation, or you know, the consequence of the situation is going to be greater than what the consequence really is.
Yeah.
A lot of times we mentally can, you know, because I've put people in places where they probably never were.
Yeah.
You know, just thinking, well, you know, he's with so and so.
Yeah.
You know, and he may not have been with so and so.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I put people in places where they're probably not.
Yeah.
So I have the ability to also feel like, because fear, you know, it comes back in with fear of, you know, what if he's out there cheating, and you know, this is going to erupt our whole picture. Right? You know what I mean? And you fear it, and that may or may not be what the case is. But in your mind, you know, once it latches on, it's there.
I heard that, putting that in perspective, it's called the story we tell ourselves, or the story I'm telling myself is that he is with somebody else, right? And it's a story, but that will dictate sometimes your behavior, your attitude, and everything else, where it might not even be going on. So to understand the story you're telling yourself, that goes through all parts of your life.
Yeah. You know, go ahead.
No, you frame things based upon the story you're telling yourself.
Right.
I'm not going to do this because, oh my God, everyone else is going to be so much better than me, and I just don't want to I don't want to have that competition. I don't want to
Right.
try because why, you know, I'm just going to go a different way because they're all going to be doing their thing and I'm just going to have to catch up. And it could just be a whole big story, and here you're denying yourself what could be a really awesome experience.
Right.
And a good truth is cast down imagination.
Mm-hmm.
You know, cast down imagination and every high thing that exalts itself over the word of God. Like for me personally, because like you say, imagination can get the best of you.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And you're thinking all kind, and I'm an artist too. Like Becky is a real artist, but I'm an artist. And you know, my imagination, I can create a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, if you act on it because of what you are thinking,
Mm-hmm.
might be a possibility. You might really be doing yourself a disservice, as well as doing the other person a disservice, because now you're looking at them like, well, you know, what are you doing? But they might not. They might be free and clear.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So at this point, we're going to go into our next subject and talk a little bit more about pain and fear. So join us again in a few minutes. So I'm see. That's it. I don't even know if that
I'm
thing's
gonna go
still
use the
working.
restroom.
Yeah.
Hopefully it
Y'all
is,
know
because
that-
we had some good content. Now don't
That
start
was
with us.
really, really good. I'm like, I hope it. Let's see, is it still on?
Yeah.
Yes.